Hello, everybody, and welcome into the 38th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We really appreciate you guys being here. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps us out. We are here every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, breaking it down for you guys. Also, check out Mark's call-in show. He's still having that every Saturday, I believe, so please check that out. And then also check out the Amazon link in the description. Does not change the buying process or experience. All it does is put a little bit of change into Mark's pocket, so it really helps out the channel, really helps out all of us. So thank you for that. Also, guys, can you check out our Michigan and Ohio State shows? There's the Ohio State show right there. I actually dropped the link in the comments. You guys can check that out. And the Michigan show. The Michigan show is actually the most watched channel on the Voice of College Football, so please check that out. Those guys do a really good job over there. I dropped that link in the comments as well. So thank you guys for being here. Springtime is around the corner, and we're going to break down spring battles. We're going to start with the offense, guys, and we might as well start out with, it's not really a battle, but we're going to talk about the position. Let's talk about this quarterback room and what you see from it, Gerald.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much of a battle to speak of, right? The Mannings said that they would not do NIL deals for Arch until he was the starter, and now, well, he's officially signed with Red Bull for NIL. So I guess some of the drama, not really, there was never going to be drama about who's going to be the starter. But like, I think the real question, honestly, what do we expect from Arch next year? We can talk about that more, but honestly, that QB2 spot, like what does that look like for Texas? KJ Lacey coming in, really highly touted kid. You've got Trey Owens still on campus, right? Who was a kid who Texas swooped in last minute and got from Iowa State, a local kid. So like, what does that backup quarterback position look like? Because I mean, granted, it's Quinn Ewers, but the last 3 years, Texas has had to rely on a backup for a couple of starts throughout the year. So that is honestly the bigger question to me. I think we know not what we're going to get from Arch. We know Arch is going to be QB1, and I think we have a good indication of his talent. But what's going to happen behind Arch is really like the big intrigue for me.
No, I'm the exact same way. We know who the starting quarterback is. Like you said, he's already got the Red Bull deal set up. I'm sure there's going to be others in the pipeline because he's going to get as much money, I'm sure, as he wants on the NIL market.
Big check for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting. Is it going to be Trey Owens? Is it going to be KJ Lacey? I guess I'll start off with that conversation. I think whoever becomes the backup here at Texas for this year probably plays a year before, if we keep Diabell in the fold for 26 before he takes over. I really don't see a multi-year starter from those two guys. And that's my opinion. I just think they're going to be a bridge from Arch Manning to Diabell. I think Diabell's very, very special personally. So that's why I think this next guy, the backup, will be the bridge. In my opinion, just what I've seen from KJ Lacey, what I've seen from Trey Owens, very limited. KJ Lacey, obviously four-star recruit coming in. He's Mr. Football from Alabama. He's a good football player. Trey Owens, big football player, was a three-star until the very end, then became a four-star. So a low four-star guy, like you said, we saw from Iowa State. I think KJ Lacey is going to take that number 2 job, not this year, but next year most likely. I think Trey Owens will be the backup for this year just because of the experience.
Yeah.
I think this is very similar to a Malik Murphy, Arch Manning situation where Malik Murphy, let's be honest here, really only was the backup that 1 year because Arch Manning was a freshman. As soon as Arch Manning was a sophomore, had some reps under his belt, and even they were practice reps, and then was also able to dive into the playbook, he took that over. I think we're looking at something similar here in this quarterback room. I think Trey Owens, because he's got a head start in the playbook, will be the backup this year. I think KJ Lacey will take that over, be the backup, and then eventually be probably the starter for 1 year.
Yeah, Sark really does value that experience and that ability to operate the offense. And you know what? Trey Owens is a guy who, even if he isn't the backup, I don't imagine him leaving. He is a program guy. Like, there's a reason why he's an Austin kid. He jumped, immediately flipped at that position. And I think this is what we expect, I think, from Texas and from the Texas quarterback room. Is like, we're going to get 2 years of Arch Manning, then we'll get at least maybe a year or 2 of KJ Lacey while Diabell gets up to speed, and then we get 2 years of Diabell, and then we get 2 years of whoever comes back. Like, Texas having routinely a redshirt sophomore that's got 2 years in the pipeline. They play for 2 years. They go pro. Like, that is how Sark, and I think how anybody really wants to manage a quarterback room in this modern day and age, right? Because you get 2 years of Arch. KJ Lacey will come in, be a redshirt sophomore coming in, right, after 2 seasons. He plays for a couple of years. He goes off to the pros, wherever, and then that puts Diabell in a redshirt sophomore situation as well, taking right over. So like you're starting to see the machine, especially at the quarterback position, starting to fire up for Texas. This is what Sark wanted to do when he came in. That's why it was so important that Quinn Ewers came in and was able to give them, especially giving them that extra year and that stability. This is what Sark wants out of his quarterback room. Have a guy who's got multiple years in the program and have your next young cat learning while he's playing. It's really perfect.
100%. And I will say this about Trey Owens. I like what I saw from him in the spring game. I think he's way ahead of where even Arch Manning was 2 years ago when he came in. I think he's ahead of where Malik Murphy when he came in. So I really like that. He's a big guy, 6'5". He's got a pretty good arm. He showed very good touch as well throwing down the field in that spring game. And I think there's a chance, like, honestly, he kind of reminds me, Mac Jones is a little bit shorter, but there's some similarities there with like not very well recruited, but then Sark kind of finds them. They get bumped up a little bit. Yeah. If he can learn the playbook, he's got a shot.
Well, and if you look, the thing I think I love the most about Trey Owens coming in is dude is just a baller. Go back and look at some of his high school performances. Dude led his team to multiple comeback victories. And there's something to be said about a guy who's like, I'm signing up to be the guy after the perfect quarterback recruit. It's like, all right, I'm going to come in and I'm going to fight my behind off. Like, there's something to be said about a dude that has that level of confidence, that level of swagger. Like, there is no mistaking or no substituting confidence in a quarterback. It's like, if Trey Owens has to come in and play, I feel okay about that, because Trey Owens, again, is a guy who came in, played at one of the highest levels of the state of Texas, played really well, led his team to a decent run in the playoff, had a couple of comeback victories under his belt. And he's a guy who, again, saw Arch Manning, Texas offered him and said, all right, bet, let's go, right? Like, there's something to be said about that.
100%. I don't think he's scared of the competition. And I agree. I think he's more likely to stay at Texas, which means, like, if he does win the job, I do think KJ Lacey eventually would transfer if that was the case. Yeah. Obviously, we're getting ahead of ourselves with that. But overall, here's another question I'll ask, and we'll go to Arch Manning on this one. What do you expect out of Arch, like, stats-wise? I'm personally thinking we're going to see, because I thought Quinn Ewers had a better year 2 years ago than last year, honestly. I think we're going to see from Arch Manning. I think we're going to see sophomore Quinn Ewers at Texas type stats from Arch Manning, with a little bit more rushing, obviously, as well.
Yeah, it's hard to call. I think, he does execute that long ball, I think, more accurately than Quinn Ewers. So I think there's going to be some bigger chunk plays. I think there's going to be an opportunity. I think one thing that we have to watch and have to, like, take with a grain of salt is, I wonder what the interception numbers are going to look like, because he's still, again, we saw a little bit against Georgia when he came in, and then those starts, like, he's still, and again, this was last year, he's going to have a full offseason under his belt. Like, the processing speed, being the full-time starter, being able to make those right decisions, he's going to be a first-year starter. Like, we have to take all of the Arch Manning conversation with a grain of salt, because first-time starter, playing in the SEC, a couple of tough road games in there as well, right? You got Georgia, you've got Florida, right? Those are things that we have to keep in mind. But ultimately, I think we're going to see, I don't know if we see like 3,000, but like that's a big number, right? So like 2,600, a decent number for him, I think, in a sophomore campaign. Rushing, I'm not too sure about, just because Sark is not going to run the quarterback intentionally. Like, I think Arch has the wheels to make some things happen on his own, but Sark is never going to run his quarterback heavy like we've seen in other offenses. So that's one that I'm not like wanting to put conjecture on, but I think you're absolutely right. Like 2 years ago, Quinn Ewers type of performance, I think is probably expected.
Yeah, I'm thinking around like total between rushing and passing, 3,000 yards, 35 touchdowns, but they're going to see somewhere between like 10 to 15 interceptions. I agree. Yeah. I think he's going to throw more interceptions just because he's going to take more risk, which I think Sark's okay with if you're able to hit the deep ball, honestly. I think that's a trade-off he's willing to make, because Quinn Ewers really didn't throw that many interceptions, but he also didn't hit as many deep balls. So I think he's willing to make that trade.
It's like the Brett Favre conundrum, right? What do you take? Brett Favre threw a ton of interceptions, but also threw a ton of touchdowns that shouldn't have happened because he was a gunslinger. And I think you got a little bit of that in Arch Manning.
No, my comp, I already tweeted it out. I'm ahead of it. Young Josh Allen. That's who I have. That's who I think he is. Young Josh Allen in the NFL. If anyone remembers watching young Josh Allen, that guy made some absolutely boneheaded mistakes, but then there are other times you'd watch, like, how the hell did he do that? The thing that comes to mind is when he's playing the Texans in the playoffs. He gets stood up, and then all of a sudden, hey, I want to throw a lateral here, and then the Texans jump on it and recover. And I'm like, why did you do that? And I think you're going to see stuff from like that from Arch Manning, but you're also going to see big plays that he makes.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that.
So let's jump over to this, because I think this one's very interesting. Let's go to the running back room. Um, so Cedric Baxter coming off a knee injury and basically a whole knee redo. Basically, he had to
Yeah.
replace basically everything in his knee. He tore like every tendon in his knee, so that's going to be very interesting. Trey Wisner does get over 1,000 yards on the season. Obviously, that takes more games than we would have liked it to. You have Jaden Blue going off to the NFL. You have Jarrett Gibson coming back. You have Christian Clark coming back from an Achilles. We'll see when he comes back. And then you have the two freshmen in James Simon and Ricky Stewart. What stands out in this room for you? Who do you think shines here? Or who do you think even starts the season, I guess, would be my first question.
Yeah, I would be shocked if it's not CJ Baxter, right? I think he's going to. It's wild to think of like in my lifetime where a torn that is a career ender when I'm playing high school football, 20 years ago, right? And now it's like, oh, he'll be back in a year. But the question we have to answer, and we unfortunately, like you look at like Jonathan Brooks, right? What is that knee going to do? Is he going to be able to trust him? And ultimately, is there a risk for re-injury, right? Jay Brooks re-injured his knee for the Panthers this year. It's like that's something to keep an eye on. But I think I would be shocked if anybody but him is RB1 coming out of fall camp. Again, I'm not sure. I'm assuming we're going to see very light work from him in the spring. You're probably not going to see much of him, if anything, of him in the spring game. Again, I think the biggest question for me is like, what does that RB2 situation look like? Is it Jarrett Gibson? Is it Quintravian Wisner? Or is it one of the other three guys that we really haven't seen it? Is it Christian Clark, one of the freshmen? I don't think it'll be them. I think Trey Wisner and Jarrett Gibson are going to be the two. And Jarrett Gibson, I was rewatching some of the earlier games this year, and he is really good when he can hold on to the freaking ball. Like Texas relied on him a lot in that Michigan game, a lot in the early season, and then he had some fumble issues. And so I think if he could sort that out in the spring, he's a really solid RB2, especially for Texas trying to run a lot of that inside zone. He's a guy that can just get in there and bang out 4.5 yards, which keeps you ahead of the chains.
Yeah, I think he had like 75 or 80 carries and he had like 5 fumbles. So he's got to clean that up. Like that was a big deal. And I'm not going to be too hard because again, a freshman, I've seen good freshmen, especially early on, make mistakes, fumble the football a lot. That's something that you can learn. My issue was with when last year when Jaden Blue was doing it 3 to 4 years into your career. That's an issue.
Yeah.
Jared Gibson can still learn. I'm not super concerned about that. The thing is with Cedric Baxter, I agree with you. Like talent-wise, he is definitely the number one running back on this team. No doubt about that, in my opinion. The problem is, I don't think early on you can rely on him to be the number one back. You have to ease him back into this role.
For sure.
Because, like you said, re-injury, that is very high risk coming back, playing contact football, and getting thrown into the fray, basically. So I think will be running back one on the depth chart, but I don't think he'll be getting the carries of a number one running back the first 4 or 5 games of the season. And that's what I'm interested to see. Like you said, who steps up? Is it going to be Trey Wisner again? Is it going to be Jarrett Gibson? Is it going to be one of the freshmen? I don't think Christian Clark plays in this too because an Achilles is really hard to come back from.
Yeah.
You lose a lot of explosiveness. So I honestly think Jarrett Gibson will probably get the majority of carries early on in the season. That's just my opinion for right now. Obviously, this is the beginning, not even the beginning of spring ball, about 5 to 6 weeks out from that. So we're just making projections, but that would be my guess as to this at this point.
Yeah, he's going to be on a very strict pitch count. Like, there's no two ways around that. And so I think Jarrett Gibson is a kid who can come in if he can clean it up, right? As a freshman, like you said, it is not acceptable, but it is something that you can okay, you could still grow through this, you could still develop through this. So what does that look like in year 2, right? Does Tashard Choice have the magic dust to sprinkle on him? Because that is, I mean, we did not see that development with Jaden Blue, right? Jaden Blue is still very much fumble prone. It's like, what does Tashard Choice do? How does he change it? Because that is going to be something that I think we need to watch. Is like fumbles under Tashard Choice have been a thing. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. There's going to be a platoon. I don't think you'll see CJ Baxter get more than 10 or 15 carries per game, if that, maybe probably capping at 10, and then you see the other guys rotate in.
Yeah, I think especially like, again, we're playing Ohio State week 1. We're not playing Louisiana Monroe or anything like that.
Yeah.
So you're playing like mano a mano, the same type of athletes that you'll play in the SEC in all season. So I don't think you're going to start him out. Here's 30 carries versus Ohio State. That's just not going to happen.
No.
I'd be honestly shocked if he got more than like 10 to 12 carries versus Ohio State. I think that's a heavy dose of Trey Wisner, Jarrett Gibson. And like you said, inside zone, that's something Sark wants to establish. That's what he wants to do. And he wasn't able to do that last year, and he wants to do that this year. And I think Jarrett Gibson is the best back out of these guys that are healthy that can do that.
I'm with you on that. I think that's going to be the secret sauce of the offense.
And then on the freshmen, who do you like more out of the two? Who do you think is more ready, James Simon or Ricky Stewart?
Man, I don't. That's a hard question to answer because I think they're both very different backs. And this is one of the things that I think I've liked about how Tashard Choice has built the running back room, is that each guy complements the other guy really well. And so I think this is in my perfect world, like, again, spinning it 3 years down the road, it's like a 1-1A situation with them. Man, gun to my head, I couldn't answer that for you. I really don't. I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, James Simon is more of a bruiser. He can run. He's not top end. He's not like the high top end speed guy.
No.
But Ricky Stewart is more like of a speedster, and that's what he, like you said, it's thunder and lightning. He always gets one of two. That's what you got last year. You got Jared Gibson, Christian Clark. They're both more bruisers, but Christian Clark does have some more pass catching ability and speed ability. I think just because of that, I think early on in your college career, you can rely more on thumping people than you can of one cut, jump, get around people, speed away. So I'm going to say James Simon. I could be wrong on that. I like Ricky Stewart. I think he's a good player, but I think James Simon, body-wise, is better right now for the college game, and his running style is better for the college game right away.
And I think what we've seen from Sark as far as what he depends on young guys for, you're more likely to see him put a young guy in there to get 3 yards. Like, you need a big body, you need a guy who can fall forward and get you 2.5 yards. So I think you're probably onto something there.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be very interesting what they decide to do there. But for me, let's just get, for right now, gun to your head, guess who gets the most carries game 1 Ohio State. I'm going to say Jared Gibson.
Yeah, I think Jared Gibson probably does as well. I would be shocked if it's anybody but Jared Gibson. I mean, we've all doubted Trey Wisner before, so it may be a situation where Trey Wisner comes in and has a big jump from year 2 to year 3. But I think right now, again, 6 months out from that, Jared Gibson feels like the safe bet.
No, I agree. I think it's hard at this point. We shouldn't be downing Trey Wisner, but at that point, I think what I'm saying is in that game, you'll probably see like 15 carries for Jared Gibson, 13 carries for Trey Wisner type thing. I don't think it's going to be 20 carries for one, 5 carries for the other. But
yeah, no, I think it'll be pretty even split. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if you see like 10 for CJ Baxter and like 12 to 15 for the other two guys behind him. And maybe it turns into Texas feeds the hot hand kind of situation. So that is also something, because that's knock Sark for some other decisions, but generally he's really good at feeding the hot hand in the running game.
Yeah, he does that with wide receivers too. He doesn't like to rotate, and we'll talk about that next. But again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. As it says on the ticker, we're here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so please check us out. Also, use the Amazon link in the description. It doesn't cost you any money. It does not change the buying experience. Please check it out. It is in the comment section as well. And also check out the Michigan and Ohio State shows. Their links are both in the comments section. Michigan channel is the most watched channel on the network. Those guys do a great job Tuesdays and Thursdays. Thursdays is the call-in show. And then also check out the Ohio State channel as well. It's also chasing the Michigan channel up there for subscribers. And we're trying to catch up. So please hit that like button and subscribe. And next up, we might as well get to it. I think this is the second, I don't know, wide receiver, tight end, and offensive line are all very interesting. So let's get into wide receiver. So right now, DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wing are going to be 2 out of your 3 starters, most likely. I don't really see how that changes. I'm going to throw this to you. Who do you think is the number 3 wide receiver at the end of spring ball, or even like if you want to go all the way at the end of fall ball, but for spring ball, who do you think it ends up being for right then?
It's hard for me to bet on anybody other than Khalil Lockett at this point.
Yeah.
Just the level of talent and the level of explosiveness and his ability. Like, he is just like, he's just a freak. Like, he is a freak athlete. He's able to take the top off the defense, but he's also big and physical. Like, he plays like a much bigger receiver somehow. I don't know how else to say that, right? But like, he's able to jump and get 50-50 balls. He is, when you think about a prototype wide receiver, I don't know if it gets any better than Khalil Lockett at this point. It's like, I would be shocked if it's anybody but him. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I would not be shocked if it's also Jamie French, because I think Jamie French is another guy who can come in and do the same thing. Very explosive athlete, able to high point the ball, physical. The route running is going to be the question, I think, for both of them. Now, Sark doesn't make things too complicated on wide receivers, especially young wide receivers. He's just like, hey, go be fast, go run a dig route, go run a slant. Right, so I'm curious to see what type of route running load. But then you see a guy like Xavier Worthy, who was a polished route runner and ran a lot more complicated routes, especially in the red zone. So like, that's going to be the question. But again, to answer your question succinctly, I would be shocked if it's anybody other than Khalil Lockett.
Yeah, I'm all in on him. I have to be, because when the DeCorian Moore thing was going on, I said on this channel, I think Khalil Lockett is the best wide receiver in the country. I don't care what anyone says. I think he's better than Dallas Wilson. I think he's better than DeCorian Moore. I think he's better than Jamie French. I just love the ability that he has overall. Like, he's got decent straight line speed, not great. He's got decent agility, not great, but he is so damn good with the ball in the air. Like, 2, 3 guys, it really doesn't matter. He can go up, out jump them, and then get the ball. And then also, what makes him unique, a lot of those guys will catch it and fall down. He catches it and stays on his feet, and he's able to get the yards after the catch. So this guy's special. And like you said, like what we did with Ryan Wingo this year, we didn't really ask him to do that much. We said, hey, run some routes, deep routes, and then also hit him on like reverses, end around, stuff like that. He had 100 yards rushing on like 5 or 6 carries. So
Yeah.
And he had 16.3 yards per catch. It was basically either run like a slant so we get you the ball quick or go deep. And I think you're going to see that with Khalil Lockett. I do agree with you. Like, route tree wise, I think Jamie French is more there. Like, he's got a pretty good route tree already as a high school kid. So I think you'll see a lot of run from those two. To me, if you look at Steve Sarkisian and what he does, he relies on about 4 to 5 guys. So if you have DeAndre Moore, Ryan Wingo, Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, you still need one more. That I don't know who it's going to be. I mean, literally, it's a coin flip for me after that. If you have any insight on that, I'd love to know what you think.
I'm curious to see what happens to Ryan Niblett in all of this, because he's a guy who came in as a wide receiver, moved to running back because he has that versatility. He's a guy who, again, another one of those athletes, another one of those kind of guys who can play all over the field, as we saw. And Sark loves those kind of guys. I would almost be curious if they have him more like what we wanted Silas Bolden to be in the offense this year. So that's another one to watch, because again, if the running back room is back to full strength, then I think Niblett goes back to the wide receiver room and plays probably behind DeAndre Moore in that spot. And so he's probably a guy who I think Texas would rely on quite a bit to do some of those gadget plays, to do some of those, hey, we need 3 yards, we're going to run you on a weird wiggle route, we're going to run a little pop pass behind the line. So that's something to keep an eye on as well in this wide receiver battle.
Yeah, and then some of the other guys, Aaron Butler, a guy that we got really late in the cycle last year, speedster. I know people have compared him to Xavier Worthy. Listen, he has the speed like similar to Xavier Worthy. He just doesn't run routes like Xavier Worthy. Like you said, Joe, like Xavier Worthy was a terrific route runner from the jump. He's just not that guy. If he was, he would have been getting run last year. So that's going to be interesting how they use him. Freddie Dubose is one of those guys like, I don't know what the hell's going on with him. I ever since he stepped on campus, everything about him has been quiet, which, hey, that's a good thing. He's not doing anything off the field, but he's not really doing anything on the field either that I hear about. So I don't know what to think about him.
Parker Livingstone's another one. Like, he's a big guy, 6'4", 200. I think 6'4", 190, 200, right? So like, what is he? How does he factor in? Is he a red zone guy? Is he a fade guy? Is he somebody that's going to go out there and get you, 15 or 20 snaps a game and you can rely on him for a couple? That's another one that I really liked Parker Livingstone coming out of high school. I think he's a guy who I want to see kind of take a step forward. This wide receiver room is honestly, outside of the top 2, pretty wide open, right? Because like you said, Sark's going to run 5 or 6 guys. So really, there are 4-ish spots that are up for the taking. So is it going to be Livingston? Dubose is a guy who's from right down the road from me in Smithson Valley. So he's another guy that I would really love to see step up and have a big year.
Yeah, Livingstone's interesting because I think they timed him as like the 4th or 5th fastest guy on the team, and the guy's huge. So he's got the athletic ability. Honestly, it's probably just coming down to if he can run the right routes and the route tree correctly. And if he can do that, he'll play. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. He's got the athletic ability. And then you have other freshmen, Dalen McCutcheon and Michael Terry III. I'm very interested to see how they use Michael Terry. I don't know if they're going to use him at wide receiver, if they're going to use him at tight end, if they're going to use him at running back, all 3 maybe. I know that was the pitch to him. But he talked about when he was on campus, I guess, that he wanted to be more of a wide receiver. So we'll see. And again, another big guy. He's like 6'3.5", 215.
Yeah.
Really good athlete. But in my opinion, it would be a shame not to move him to tight end. I think he fits tight end better than wide receiver personally.
He feels like a guy who you kind of come in and you see what he looks like after a full semester of strength and conditioning and nutrition at the college level, because he's got a frame that you could see, like you said, bulk up to tight end pretty easily if he gets a good nutrition plan, if he gets a good, but again, he at 18, 17, 18, your body's still changing quite a bit. So he's a guy that, again, a lot of positional versatility. He could be on that Jatavian Sanders kind of receiving tight end route. It's going to be. I'm very interested to see what his body looks like, and that's a weird way to say that, but like what he develops into post spring.
And then Dalen McCutcheon, again, I like him, but he's long-term to me. I don't really see him
Yeah.
getting many snaps next year. So we'll have to see with him. And hopefully he gives it time, because if he gives it time, I think he can be a really good player at Texas. I just don't think he's a freshman that can pop right away.
And that's a good thing about having a lot of young talent is that, and even when we talk about Terry, right? He's a guy who may have a little bit longer developmental curve just because he played so many spots at high school. Once he gets focused on one spot, I think we'll probably see some explosive growth from him as well.
No, I agree. And then last question, do you think we should add a wide receiver in the portal if we can? Like, let's say someone between a Matthew Golden type and a Silas Bolden type ender. So like a B- receiver, I would say.
Yeah, when I talk about portal recruiting and you talk about, do you need to raise the ceiling or do you need to raise the floor? And I think Texas could really do a lot with adding a guy who raises the floor of this group. Like, I think the ceiling is already pretty high based upon what talent they have, but do they have a guy who can go out and be that Matthew Golden? Like, hey, I'm going to be open for 7 yards when you need 6. Hey, I'm going to get the tough couple of yards after catch to get your first down. I think they probably could stand to use that. Again, I wouldn't be shocked if they don't go out there post-spring, but if there's a guy, I think post-spring that gets you some seasoning, get you some experience, get you, and again, some of that maturity and that ability like you saw from, I think, and I don't expect them to be the ceiling of Matthew Golden, right? Matthew Golden's getting some first-round hype in the NFL draft right now, so like I don't expect them to go out and get a first-round guy. But if you can get a solid contributor, 500 yards, a couple of touchdowns, a guy who can be a consistent presence in that room, I would not be mad about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can go out and get a 400 to 500 yard wide receiver, I think that would be perfect, honestly. If they get that, I would have no issue with it. And I agree. It would just like fortify the room. I think the room is like good talent wise. I just experience wise, I don't love it. I would love to have a little bit more experience in there, but I'm excited to see. And then let's make this prediction. Next year, who's leading the team in reception yards?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I think gun to my head, I think I've got to say DeAndre Moore. I think just based on what they can do with him in the offense and his ability to, again, you have him on a pop pass. It's effectively a run, but he's running it for a couple hundred, 20 yards or so. Like, I think he's probably the guy.
I'm going to go Ryan Wingo. So
okay.
that was our first disagreement on anything. But I just think there's too much upside with him, and he's got such big playability.
I can see that.
And I honestly think they're probably going to have him drop like 5 pounds, and he's going to get even faster. Like, he's already pretty fast, but I think he's going to get even faster. So that's going to be the wide receivers before we enter spring. We'll be doing these after spring too, when we obviously get more intel on the rooms as a whole. Let's talk about this room, because this room is, we talked about wide receivers not knowing. I have no freaking idea what's going to happen in this room. I think this room might be the most wide open room on the whole team, and that's the tight end room. Who are you looking at here to step up?
I mean, it's Spencer Shannon feels like feels like the right name to say. He's got a ton of potential. He's a big guy. He's got, I think, more Gunnar Helm in him, more inline blocking than he does like Jatavian Sanders, pass catcher kind of situation. Like, those are kind of the two. And I that's not to be a slight at Gunnar Helm's pass catching ability, obviously, but like when you think about the two prototypes of tight ends in this offense, I think he skews more Gunnar Helm than he just does Jatavian Sanders. And so I think he's a guy who can come in, be a big body, be a consistent. But again, Jordan Washington is a guy that a lot of people have a lot of really great things to say about him. Again, there's an ability for Jeff Banks to cement himself as like the GOAT developer if he can do something with Jordan Washington, right? Because we saw Jatavian Sanders come in and he needed a whole year to get ready. Then he came in and turned himself into an NFL draft pick, right? Gunnar Helm came in, was an under-recruited kid, turned into an NFL draft pick, right? If he can turn either of these guys, Spencer Shannon or Jordan Washington, there's a lot of raw material for Jordan Washington. Jeff Banks can really do a lot for his legacy at Texas if he can turn one of these guys into a stud.
No, 100%. Yeah, I agree. I think Spencer Shannon, obviously more of a blocker than he is a pass catcher. I honestly think they're probably going to tell him what they told Gunnar Helm a year ago, which is, hey, get in a little bit better shape, give us some more agility, and you'll play, because I think he'll be able to come in and block. I mean, the guy's 6'7", 250.
Yeah, he's huge.
You're going to be able to block at least half decently being that big. Honestly, just slide your feet and get in the way. That will work at that position.
Yep.
Jordan Washington is a really good athlete. He came in as like a skinny kid. He was like 6'3.5", like 205 pounds, 210 pounds. He's already upped it to like 250 or 240. So he's put on a good amount of weight. I don't know if it's all healthy weight, but he put on a lot of weight. And then Nick Townsend and Emery Winston both come in as freshmen. Nick Townsend is a freak. If anyone hasn't watched his high school highlights, holy crap. Guy's like 6'3", 220, and he runs like a 10.8 100-meter yard dash. He's a freak athlete. So
yeah,
I think he's got a chance to actually play here. Like, if he can block half decently, just give effort, I think they'll put him in the game just because of how good he is at catching the ball and getting away from people.
Yeah, and there's, again, that's one of those, like, just get in the way of somebody, slow somebody down, be on the back, maybe on the back side of a play. Don't put them on the front side of a play if you're running zone, right? But on the back side of a play, be able to just get in somebody's way, reach a linebacker once or twice, and hopefully you spring something. There is a lot. This is, I think, of all of the groups on the offense, like the widest delta between like floor and ceiling, right? This could be a really not great group for Texas next year, especially coming off of what we've seen for the last couple of seasons. But if one or two of these hands hit, right, if one or two of these bets pay off, this could be a really like found money situation for Texas where the tight end continues to be an asset. So this is going to be a very wide delta, and Jeff Banks is going to have to earn his paycheck.
No, 100%. Yeah, you've gone from a guy in Jatavian Sanders who was like a 5-star guy, all-world type guy, and now he was a 4th-round draft pick. Then you go to Gunnar Helm, kind of under-recruited, but then we saw the flashes, and then he's probably going to be like a 2nd or 3rd-round draft pick at worst.
Yeah.
And now you're going to guys that have literally no experience, like none. We don't know anything about them. We didn't even talk about Will Randall, but let's be honest here. He came because Arch Manning came. We gave him a scholarship because Arch Manning came. They're friends. That's what happened. I have no issue with it. I'm not hate.
Not at all.
He's just not going to get much playing time, if any, for this team. But I don't know what's going to happen here. In my opinion, right now, just looking at it, I think you're going to have 2 like C tight ends. That's what I see. I don't see like anyone getting 600, 700 yards receiving. I see 2 guys getting like 250 yards receiving, or 2 guys getting 200 yards receiving each. I don't see a high-end NFL prospect right now as it sits.
And there's so many mouths to feed in the wide receiver room. I think that's okay. Right? I think, again, be a good blocker, be a plus blocker, and be a safety valve when Arch needs one, and you're doing fine.
No, that was the biggest thing for me is I want to find the best blocker at tight end, because if we can get the best blocker at tight end and the offensive line gets used to running inside zone and we just start to maul people, and then also what we didn't talk about in the wide receiver room, I think the wide receivers as a whole will be really good blockers as well. Ryan Wingo's a pretty good blocker. DeAndre Moore, we know, is a good blocker. If someone else can step up at that 3rd wide receiver spot and be a good blocker, this team could be really good at blocking for the run. And I think that's what we're going to need on this football team. Play action will open it up for Arch. You can hit down the field. So whoever can block the best out of this group, and my guess would probably be Spencer Shannon, and then it would go Jordan Washington, and Nick Townsend would be my top 3. That's how I'd rank it. So that's where I am with that room. Where do you think? So you think Spencer Shannon's going to be the starter?
I would be surprised if it's not him, just strictly based on blocking ability at this point. I think Texas cannot afford to take a step backward in blocking ability, and so I think that's why Spencer Shannon, or where Spencer Shannon probably differentiates himself.
No, I agree. I think that's who's probably going to start most of the year. I could see Jordan Washington coming on late. I could see a lot of that with a lot of these young guys coming on late. So we'll have to see there, but we both agree on that. Now, another room, lost a lot here. We're returning 1 starter, I guess, technically, but Cole Hudson played a lot. So in my opinion, we're returning 2. I mean, he played it just as much as DJ Campbell almost. So let's talk about this offensive line. A lot of guys to talk about. Let's start at this. We both agree Trevor Goosby's going to be the left tackle, correct? Like, I don't really know a world where that isn't happening.
Yeah, I would be shocked if there's anybody else in the room that takes over. I would be flabbergasted.
Yeah, I think there's a better chance he ends up as a 1st-round pick than he doesn't start at Texas next year. Like, after next year.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. I think there's a reason why he came in and replaced Kelvin Banks when he got hurt. Right? There's a reason why he came in and replaced Cam Williams when he got hurt. He's the best tackle on the team right now because those other 2 left. So best tackle goes to left tackle, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's actually upside there that he can be better than Cam Williams. I really believe that. Like, just watching him, I think he moves a little bit better than Cam Williams. My only issue, again, is in open space on the screens. He needs to block better. But other than that, like, just general pass protection and just run blocking, I think he was just as good as Cam Williams was during that last year. Like, I really didn't see a drop off.
Yeah. Not enough to warrant any concern, right? And even at left tackle, right? Like Kelvin Banks, obviously surefire first round pick, but like it was not a situation where it was like 2 or 3 years ago when a tackle goes down, you're like, holy crap, this looks awful. There was a drop off, but it wasn't like embarrassing. It was just like, hey, this guy is a freshman coming in, replacing the number one tackle on the board.
Yeah, and then let's move to left guard. So this one is just completely open. I mean, you could have Neto, you could have Connor Stroh, you could have Cole Hudson. I think those are probably your main three. It'd take a lot for me to believe like Nate Kibble takes that job or Daniel Cruz moves over to left guard. I don't see that. So out of those three, who do you think ends up as the left guard starter?
Nato is a guy who I like and I want to see be successful. He's the kind of body that Kyle Flood likes. And again, I think for him, he's still learning football in a little bit. Like he was kind of a late starter in football. So I think that's probably where the development curve comes from with him. But I think again, if I have to pick right now, he's the guy I think slots in there left guard.
No, I agree. I think he's actually a better run blocker than a couple of these other guys. I'm worried about him in pass protection. That's where I've seen him struggle. He's not as quick as the other guys we're used to. And that's something. Hayden Connor was spectacular in the run blocking. He actually struggled in pass protection. So I could kind of see something similar this year again at left guard. And the thing that kind of sucks is whoever does, like you have two spots for three people. It's going to be Neto, Connor Robinson, and Cole Hudson battling out left guard center. Two of those spots are going to go to 2 out of 3 of those guys. One of them is going to transfer. That's just going to happen. I mean, Neto's a junior, Cole Hudson's a senior, and Connor Robinson's a senior. They're going to have to transfer. So when that happens, I'm just letting Texas fans know it's not a big deal. It was going to happen. They're going to battle it out. They'll find the best one, and one of them is going to have to transfer.
Yeah, I mean that's a good problem to have, right? The rising tide raises all ships, and sometimes a guy has to leave, and it is what it is. Like that's part of it. We have to get used to that if Texas is going to be at this level.
No, 100%. I agree. I think Neto is going to be the left guard. So that means I think we both agree on the center. You think Cole Hudson's going to be the center as well?
I would be shocked if it's anybody but Hudson. I mean, I think there is Connor Robertson probably not. I really wanted to see Daniel Cruz be that guy. I think maybe he is next year, but I think we're in agreement there.
No, yeah, I think it's going to be Cole Hudson. I could see a scenario where Daniel Cruz is the center if he has a really big jump from year 1 to year 2, and then Cole Hudson's left guard, and then that means honestly at that point you'd probably be losing 2 guys. You'd probably be losing Neto and Connor Robertson, and I wonder if that goes into the decision making for the staff as well. Because if it's super close, just give it to Cole Hudson so you don't lose Cole Hudson. I mean that I'm fine with that. By the way, if it's close, if it's not close, then I don't like that. But if it's close, I understand that line of thinking. So that means at that point, you probably are losing Connor Robinson, which sucks. And it's kind of weird because he came in during the Red River rivalry 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought he played pretty well in Jake Major's absence, and we haven't ever seen him since then. So
it's good to have a good backup center, right? It is what it is.
Yeah. Right guard, it's Devon Campbell. Like he came back for a reason. He's the only returning starter, I should say. And he'll be the right guard here. I really don't see any competition here. Maybe they slide him to left guard or something of that nature, but he's playing guard, whatever it is. But I think he's going to stay at right guard. So I want him to finally live up to his potential. I would say out of that 2022 class, I'm not saying he's been bad. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying compared to what he was rated, he's probably been the biggest disappointment.
Yeah, and I think it's because of not only the rating, right? 5-star, like 5-star wire to wire kid. A lot of manufactured drama with his recruiting. Like he didn't announce, but he's already signed, and so it was a weird that situation. And it sucks that he came in with another 5-star that stepped on campus and was ready to play day one. Right? It's like there's that comparison as well. You think about Kelvin Banks with a 5-star in the same class. Kelvin Banks has already proven himself enough to go on to the NFL. It's like there's that sticking point. I'm with you. I really like DJ Campbell. I put in his eval when I was writing recruiting stuff that like part of the concern with him is like he was in such a run heavy scheme in high school. The pass blocking is going to need to develop pretty quickly, and it just hasn't. And so I think he's still got to work on the eyes. He's still got to work on the feet and pass blocking. He's still got to look for work and find work regularly as he is back there in pass pro. So I want him. I really want him to be successful. I'm a big DJ Campbell fan. I want him to be good. I really think he can be good, but this is one of those like you got to go or get off the pot years for him.
Yeah, he's been super inconsistent. It's he's kind of like the Alfred Collins of the offensive line. Like you see the talent sometimes, and the other times you're like, "What the hell are you doing?" I mean, we've seen that because Cole Hudson has had to replace him in some games because he's not playing well.
Yeah.
So it's confusing there. And the reason I'm saying this again, the rating, it's not just the rating, guys. This guy was the highest rated offensive lineman of this past decade, not just a year of this past decade. So he's the Quinn Ewers basically of the offensive line, and he just hasn't lived up to that.
Yeah.
So it sucks, and I'm hoping he can live up to it because he's got crazy potential, and maybe the scheme will help him inside zone. I think he'll be really good at that. He's a really hard-nosed, angry guy when he blocks, so I think this will help him a little bit moving to inside zone instead of outside zone.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like I said, the run blocking was never the question with him. In pass pro, what are his eyes doing? What are his feet doing? Where is he looking? That was always the big issue. I text with a guy named Daniel Sehorn. He played offensive line in college, and he's a recruiting writer. And that was always our complaint. It was like, DJ Campbell is great in run blocking. He's going to put somebody on their keister and then find another person to put on their keister. But where are his eyes when in pass pro? Does he have good eye discipline? Is he looking in the right spots for work? Are his feet staying active? Like, those are the things that I've been disappointed in based upon how high of expectations I had for DJ Campbell. Because I think that kid could be a first-round pick, could be a top couple of offensive linemen off the board. Guards don't usually go as high as tackles, right? So, but again, he's a guy who could be an early pick, a high-rated guy with all of the intangibles he has. What are his eyes going to do? What's going on between the ears? Because that's really where it is at this point.
100%. Right tackle, Brandon Baker. Is that where you're landing him?
Yeah, I think Brandon Baker's going to be there. I would be shocked. He was a guy who came in, and I loved his upside. Great body, great physicality. He stepped into a room. I think if he had been pressed into service at a couple as he came as a freshman, he'd have been fine. But being able to sit behind Cam Williams for a couple of years and develop, I think he's going to be even better.
Yeah, 100%. He's 6'4", 315 from Mater Dei out of California. Big kid. He was one of those guys like a must get out of that class a couple years ago, and we got him. And I expect a lot. Like, I think he was a lower 5-star kid, and he has the body type, he has the feet, he has everything you need. Can he anchor that right side of the offensive line? And that's another reason, like, to be high on Devon Campbell, because listen, you're going to have to be the leader this year on that offensive line. You're going to have to also help out the young guy on the offensive line, which is to your right. And I think he's got to step up, and I think Brandon Baker, I think he'll play pretty well. It's kind of the opposite with Brandon Baker. I think he'll do well in pass protection. I'm probably more worried about him in the run side of things, but you are probably with the best run blocker on the team next to you. So I think that will help out.
Yeah, again, it's good. It is going to be an interesting group to watch develop and coalesce.
Yeah, and then Andre Kojo is probably going to be his backup. This guy, 6'6", 340 pounds. That's going to be interesting. He's probably got the more Kyle Flood type build. So maybe he develops faster. Maybe he's the starter. I don't know, but we'll see about him. I have high hopes for him as well. We'll see how he does during spring, but that does it for the offensive line. I think we agree on basically everything. I'm hoping someone else steps up because right now we're pretty green behind everyone that we think is going to be starting. Like, I would have loved, if we're going to land anyone in the spring portal, I would love like just a veteran 6th offensive lineman that we could land and then also get like an older wide receiver. If we land that or an older tight end, then I feel pretty good. Honestly, I'd rather land like an older tight end than anything.
Yeah, I think a tight end is going to be good. Tight end can be an unlock for this offense. We saw it with Gunnar Helm. We saw it with Jatavian Sanders, like as somebody that can be a threat at that spot. And not even like a like massive, like, again, like we don't need 700 yards from them. Texas needs probably 300 or 400 yards from them.
No, 100%. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below as you see that on the ticker. And also, this is the 38th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. We really appreciate you guys being here. Check out the comments and follow that link over to the Ohio State Voice of College Football channel and subscribe over there. Also, go over to the Michigan channel and subscribe over there. Both of those links are in the comments, so we really appreciate that. Also, use the Amazon link in the description. It does not change the buying process or experience. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Again, guys, this has been the 38th edition of Texas Longhorns Live, and you can catch each one of us on Twitter or X right there. There's Gerald's right there, as well as his Longhorn pod, which he does. Please check that out. It's a really good listen over there on every Spotify, Apple, all of it.
Anywhere you find podcasts, you can check us out.
There you go. And then there's my extra Twitter. Check me out there as well. I really appreciate you guys being here. We will be here for the 39th edition talking defensive spring battles. So we really appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us, and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.